Okay, so tonight's discussion will be on the history and the relevance of objects of former Jewish citizens of Cologne. And the Documentation Center on National Socialism has built up a large collection of mainly personal artifacts donated by Jewish former citizens and their descendants over the past decades. And these artifacts range from documents, letters, photo albums, and diaries to clothes and household goods even. So it's a very varied, diverse collection we hold. And given the circumstances under which people who later donated these to us, or their ancestors, under which they left Cologne, had to leave Cologne, it's quite astonishing to see what people took with them and what survived over all those years. Considering that the amount of luggage people were allowed to take with them when they escaped Germany during the 30s, and the increasing restrictions on customs and things that were allowed to be taken during the 30s. It's amazing what people chose to take with them. It was not necessarily the obvious and practical things you would think people would have needed to start a new life somewhere else, to make a living elsewhere. But very often the things which were taken were those with a high emotional value, and those with a personal connection to the friends and the families those escaping from Germany had to leave behind. And many of them kept, especially those emotional objects, for the rest of their lives. And then only at a very late old age decided to donate them to our collections, or very often it was the descendants who later on decided that they wanted them to be preserved professionally. And for research, these artifacts, they grant us valuable insights into the people's everyday lives, and how they identified, how they saw themselves, the mentality they had, and also the impact the persecution under the Nazi regime had on their lives and their self-identification. But for the families and the descendants of those who escaped, for them, these objects they still have a huge emotional value, and it's very often they only have very few things of their families, of their ancestors. So these objects have a huge relevance and a huge value for them as well. And tonight I'm very happy to welcome two descendants of Jewish former citizens from Cologne to the discussion. First, it's Ruth Ton Mendelsohn joining us from Tel Aviv tonight. Her mother escaped with her father in the early 30s. I think it was 1934, wasn't it? And then she wrote a diary, which she started writing when she was still living in Cologne, but which she continued writing in her new home in Palestine and Right Israel. And Ruth is going to tell us the story behind that diary and present us the story of her mother. And then after that, Marion Bruce, joining us from the UK near London, she's going to talk about a very special object her father took when he fled to South Africa in 1937. And he got a quite special present from his parents, which he kept for the rest of his life, and which is now in our part of our collection. And she's going to present that story after Ruth's presentation. It will take about 30 to 40 minutes, after which I would like to discuss some questions on the relevance and the significance these objects still have, especially for families, with our two discussants. And then at the end, for the last 10 to 15 minutes, we will also open up the panel to questions from the audience. So if there's anything you would like to ask our two panelists, or if you have your own experiences you would like to share with the audience, you're welcome to do this at the end of the discussion. Or if there's something you would like to ask right away, just put it in the chat, and then we can see if we can get back to that sometime in between or leave it to the end of the discussion. But feel free to put everything you'd like to know in the chat whenever a question comes up. So yes, now I would like to start with the first presentation by Ruth John Mendelsohn, and I'll give the word to you.
אוקיי. איתה תפעיל את המצגת. אני לא רואה אותה פה. einen Augenblick, ככה אני רואה אותה, אוקיי. Okay. Okay, Birte, thank you very much for inviting me.
Gesundheitskursen in Bewegung bleiben und mehr.
I hear some noise in the background. Okay. Thank you, Birte, for inviting me to this family talks. And thanks the audience, a nice audience who took the time to come and listen to it. So, okay, this is my mother, Chava Rosenberg-Thon. She was born in Cologne to Dr. Eugen Rosenberg and to Irma Rosenberg, by the way, which were cousins. Later on, they didn't finish their life together, and I will come to it during the next slides. Here is two periods of my mother. I think the black and white one is she's younger, and here it's in Ben Yehuda Strasse in Tel Aviv. And my mother used to dress in a very sort of this kind of clothing. And the shoemaker was working in the Ben Yehuda Strasse. He once told me that whenever my mother was passing there, he was sure that that they are shooting a film about India or something, because she looked so very exotic with all her clothing. Next slide, בבקשה. Okay, the next slide is a house. This house stands in Cologne, in Walter Rathenau 29, and it's a house, it's a villa, what we call in Israel a villa. It's on the Rhine. It's actually standing on almost on the Rhine. There is a road here, and then the Rhine comes. And this villa was the grandfather, my grandfather, Eugen Rosenberg, invited this architect who was, his name was Hans Schumacher, and he was from the Bauhaus Stil, one of the famous ones, and he wasn't born in Cologne, but later on he came to Köln, and he built some houses in Köln, as far as I know. This house was built, I think they entered it, I think, in 1930. And
1928.
1928. The Beate, she will correct me, and what she says is always more correct than what I say, although she wasn't born to the family. So 1928, it's nice to know that they had some years there. And this Schumacher, she speaks about this house in her diary, and she says that what was new about this building is that they used to have floods of the Rhine. The Rhine got, up, and all the houses used to be flooded. But this guy, Schumacher, he built this house against the Hochwasser, as they say, the high waters. and during the winter, all of the houses, the lower part were flooded, and the people had to go to the upper floors. But in their case, they had a very nice kitchen, warm kitchen, and nothing happened because this architect took all the measures in order to avoid this such a case. And this house, because it is under severe איך אומרים? שימור, you shouldn't...
Preservation.
Reservation, right, Alona, תודה, reservation.
P with P. Preservation.
Preservation, תודה. You cannot change a thing, not inside and not outside. And I was the owner of this house for 1 week. And okay, and they lived there from 28, as we said, until 33, 34, when they had to escape. And this villa was taken by the Nazis, and as far as I know, a teacher was living there, a teacher woman. And then later on, when the Germany did what we call the Wiedergutmachen, to make good from again or something like this, the house was returned according to the will of my grandfather. The house was returned, half of it to my mother, his daughter, and half of it to his German mistress, Frau Trück, of whom I will mention her later on. Shikufit Shlishit. This is a diary.
No.
This is not the only diary. This is a big diary, but she has also some small diaries, which are very, very beautiful. This diary is all full of drawing from... it's a diary. I know that in Germany it was a common thing, so to write a diary, a Tagebuch, and to write about everyday life and what's happening. But in this case, this diary is so special because it's all full of a drawing that both my mother and her father, Eugen, they drew together, because although he was a very rich notar and lawyer, he also was an artist. And when they came to Palestine in 1934, he neglected, of course, all his knowledge about the law and all this, and he became a complete artist. He did ceramics, and he opened a gallery in Jerusalem and so on. He never came back to deal with his profession. And okay, the diary lasts from 29, when she described in the first scene, she described her room and so on, and what she is not satisfied with the furniture and the curtains that were chosen for her. And it ends almost when her father died in Jerusalem in 1937. Next שקופית, בבקשה. Okay, this is a page from the diary where you can see that I think he drew it. I'm not sure that she did, because she was then around 14 or something. So I think it's him who drew it. And in the next photo, you can see 2 years ago, we went to Cologne. Again, it was due to, and thanks to Beate, whom you see here with us and who is standing here. And then me and my husband, and this is Dr. Kubeczka, and he was the manager of the Alpine Club, because my grandfather was a member of honor in this Alpine Club, you know, these people who went to the Alps to do ski and all this. And this is a photo of my grandfather, who was very elegant person. And these are the three Stolpersteine, Avnei Negev in Hebrew. And one is for the father, Eugen, one is for the mother, Irma, and one is for my mother, Eva Rosenberg Thon. And what I noticed that they didn't, in her stone, they didn't put the date of her death. And when I asked them, why didn't they put the death of the date of the hair? Because in the grandfather and the grandmother, they did put the date of their death. And he said because her death was not directly influenced by the Nazis, and that's why they are not writing it, because she died in 92, and it's not, you know, directly so. That's why they put only the two names of the parents. And also what's important to say that the artist who invented all these Stolpersteine, he himself came and he put these stones in the ground. And then we went with him to a restaurant and we had pizza and we talked to him. It was very sweet event, although it was cold like hell. Okay, next shikufit. Okay, this one is I think it's exercises in typography that my mother did, and we just put it because it was so beautiful. Jerusalem, Rehavia, where they live. Next one.
Wow.
This is another beautiful 2 pages. In the diary, she tells about a very harsh time, a lot of shooting and violence in the streets and all this, and tension. But I didn't find in the Hebrew translation of the diary if this drawing has to do with the content. But in any case, we put it because it is so beautiful. Next slide, please. This is another double, very beautiful one. This has to do with a drawing, because here she tells about that she was called a emergency from the school. It wasn't far away, I think, from where they lived. And because there was a Kurzschluss, something wrong with electricity or something, and they thought that the house is on fire. And that's why she was called very urgently to come. And they somehow, she and him, I don't know how they did it or what, and they use, I think, sometimes even to draw together, because I see here this minaret or something. It's very professional. I think it's him. Okay, next one. Okay, this is a very sweet one too. This is the building is Bezalel Academy of Art, the first building, the old building. Bezalel was established in 1906 by Boris Schatz, and it was the first art institution in Israel, and it affected a lot all Israeli art, because a lot of people went to study there. They are studying there until today. In this building is the Department of Architecture, I think, but since then they were in, איך אומרים? הר הצופים, Mount Scopius, איך אומרים? And
Mount Scopus.
Mount Scopus, and they recently they built a beautiful building in the middle of a modern one for the academy. It's a very famous school, and the diary commemorates the visit of the High Commissioner, His Majesty Herbert Samuel. And he was brought to the school, and the picture was taken, and here you can, if it interests anybody, all the teachers, the important teachers of the school, Dr. Rupin was there, and a lot of very important people who took this historic photo, and it's very beautiful. They cut it from what was it, Palestine, איך קראו לזה? Palestine Illustrated News. This was the name of this newspaper. And okay, we go to the next one. We are almost done. This is a very, very beautiful double two. I don't know what is a connection to the, I didn't find it in the Hebrew translation because I don't know, my mother did some cuts in the diary that she typed, so not all the diary, I suspect not all of the diary is translated. You can see here, Papa, 3 of June 36. And it's very, very beautiful. This is a piece of, that's her father did for sure. It's a piece of glass that he painted on it, and then he sort of, איך אומרים לתפור? הוא תפר את, he saw it into the paper. It's very, very beautiful. I love this page. And the next one, this is the last one. Yes, this is the last one. So I will just say that there are two things that I learned for all this thing with the diary, which I know from my childhood. First of all, talk to your parents. If you don't talk to your parents on the right time, then you don't have anyone to ask, because I'm an only daughter, and there are a lot of stuff that I don't know. I knew this diary. She told me things, but I never sort of went over it with her. So there are a lot of missing stuff, and I will never know. And this is very, 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 very sad and frustrating for me. And I will just say that Eugen Rosenberg, he died in 37 from dysentery, I think. He is buried in הר הזיתים. איך קוראים להר הזיתים באנגלית? Olive, Mount Olive. Yes, הר הזיתים. And when I translated and by the way, the real mother, when he died, I don't know, she probably got a letter. It was in already 37. She came from Germany. She came from Germany to take my mother back to Germany because she was a little bit verrückt. So she wanted, but my mother, she was there in her she was 17 or something, or she told her, no, I'm not going with you. The mother, the real mother, went back to Germany, and the Nazis took her already in 42 and killed her in some kind of hospital. And Trück, the mistress, who lived, she was a complete German, but I think she loved him very much, and she never married again. I mean, they weren't married, but she never married later on. She lived a long time until she was 90, and she left back to Germany, and she got the house in the Wiedergutmachen period. And the other thing that I was very relieved to know, when after they translated the diary was translated, is that they had life here in Jerusalem, in Rehavia. They had life when the World War, this terrible war, was going on in Europe. They had company, they had the parties, they had art, and I can even perhaps say that I feel from the diaries that in a certain way they were, even I would dare to say, happy. And this is very, very touching, and everything in this diary is very touching. And I'm dreaming to make a book out of it, but I never get to do it. So that's it, and thank you very much for listening. I wanted to read a piece from the diary. Rega. Rega, a small thing in German. I want to read to you. It's very, very short. This is where she, just that the people who speak German here will see the language. She described here when the Nazis took the father, it was already in 33. So she says, die Haussuchung, החיפוש בבית. Sie überfielen uns aus heiterem Himmel. Überall waren sie und das Telefon hatten sie gleich abgeschnitten. Trina was the maid. Trina war es gelungen, mit dem Hund herauszugehen, Vater zu warnen. Der kam etwas später mit der Straßenbahn und sie fingen ihn auf der Straße ab. Man setzte ihn 2 Wochen in Schutzhaft, den reiste ihm dort im Zuchthaus vorgesetzt, hätten wir nicht einmal unserem Hund gegeben. Deshalb kochte Trina, העוזרת, für ihn, was gewohnt war und durfte es, nachdem magenkrank war, ihm ins Gefängnis bringen. Ich bin mit Jolie was the dog, Jolie, mitgegangen, war aber nicht in der Lage, hereinzugehen. Auch Studentvater hatte sie für ihn vorbereitet. Nach 14 Tagen, אחרי 14 יום, wurde entlassen, durfte sich aber nicht mehr in Köln aufhalten. Ging zu seinem Bruder Fritz nach Berlin. Nahm mich mit, weil ich nicht bei meiner Mutter bleiben wollte. I would just say to the Israelis here, היא מתארת כאן איך תפסו את אבא שלה, ב-33 הם נכנסו להם לבית, עשו בלגנים, ניתקו את הטלפון, הייתה להם טרינה הייתה מין אומנת, משרתת, הכל, כי האמא שלה לא עשתה שום דבר, כל היום קנתה בגדים, והיא רצה להזהיר אותו, אבל הם כבר תפסו אותו ברחוב, והרביצו לו מכות, ושמו אותו בבית סוהר, הם פתחו איזה מין בית סוהר הראי כזה, מאיזה בית של יהודי ענק, היינו שם, ושמו אותו שבועיים שם, וטרינה הוא לא יכול היה לאכול, היא כותבת שהאוכל, לכלבים שלה הם לא היו נותנים אוכל כזה, אז האומנת הזאת, העוזרת, טרינה, הייתה כל יום מביאה לו את האוכל שהוא היה רגיל, כי היה לו קשה בקיבה, ואחר כך שחררו אותו אחרי שבועיים, וזה הודות גם לטריק הזה, זה אני יודעת מאמא שעשתה להם חנדלח, לא יודעת מה, והוא שוחרר, אבל הוא לא יכול היה לחזור לקרן, והוא ברח לאח שלו פריץ בברלין, שהיה המנהל של AEG, והיא באה איתו, בגלל שהיא לא רצתה להישאר עם האמא, זה כזה קטנצ'יק כזה. זהו, פרטי.
Okay, thank you very much, Ruth. So I think that was a very vivid insight into the diary and how it transports all the feelings and the experiences of your mother, and she wrote that under the direct impact of what had happened and the direct experiences. So it's a very good insight into what it meant for the people to experience that persecution and the terror and the violence. What's also quite interesting is that part of the diary she wrote more or less up to date, but then she sometimes later on edit things in hindsight, and that's quite interesting because there you can see how memory works. There are very often diverging memories, so there are differences in what she remembered a couple of years later and how she wrote about it directly after the thing, well, at the time. So it's also a very good source if you want to see how memory works and how memory can shift and be influenced by later experiences. Yeah, but thank you very much. Well, as you could see, the diary is in German, and you did mention that, and you wrote the passage in German. And you also mentioned the Hebrew translation. So I can imagine that when you first came across that, it was quite difficult for you to access, wasn't it? I mean, with different language. Did you know right away what it was about, or did it take you the
I
Hebrew
didn't know.
translation? How did you get it translated?
I went to two translators. One was too expensive, so I went to the other one who was cheaper, and I hired him. I'm not so very satisfied with his translation. He translated in a kind of very, I don't know, such an like, איך אומרים מסורבל, רפי? איך? Clumsy sort of, and very heavy sort, because he tried to do the German. Probably I cannot judge a German, but I can judge a Hebrew, and I'm a little bit crossed with her that she edited the original, because sometimes I don't, she writes only one letter in the typed, what she typed later on, from which I translated. I didn't bring to the translator the handwriting, which was a mistake of mine. And now things are missing, because there are much better stories there. And she didn't do right, that she cut and edited stuff from there. And I need once to sit with somebody to make the all the parts that are not, that are absent, because I hardly can read. I can, if I had everything typed, perhaps I could slowly, with Google Translate, I could translate to myself. But I cannot understand the handwriting. Absolutely not. I can't understand what's written here. It's so
I think it's
frustrating.
important to mention that the diary of your mother, this German is a very old German. She had a high level German. I remember when she explained her new room, the house, etc. I don't think that you can translate this into Hebrew in the right way. It's too hard.
Yes,
I think it's difficult to convey the original language, especially with it being quite an old-fashioned language. But then I think that the typed one you mentioned, that's the one which was, well, she wrote later on. So the handwritten one, that's the thing she wrote at the time. While the handwritten one, I think that's more or less written from her memory later on, and on the basis of what she put in the first diary. So it might be worth getting a translation of the original version.
Yes.
Anyway, so thank you very much once again, and let's
thank you.
Give the stage to Marion and her father's story and the objects which have a special meaning for her.
Thank you very much. Yes, there are so many stories to tell. We also have a diary of my mother's from 1933. But I'm here to talk about my father. I haven't got PowerPoint, but I have got here just a photograph of my father and his family. He was Harold Katz, otherwise known as Harry. And my sister and I grew up in South Africa. With the knowledge of our family, my father was always talking and wanting us to know where we came from. We had a big family photo.
Halte mich fest, nee, lass mich nicht los.
This
Katz Rosenthal.
Here is the Katz Rosenthal family, a very prominent. They were all butchers in the meat trade. And my father left a tape with the documents, a couple who wanted to document what life was like in Cologne. And he talked about Uncle so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so and what happened to them. And he always wanted us to know who we came from. And he said to my sister and I once when we were a bit lost in London, you come from good stock. And one thing my father always had was his Gute Wintermantel, his huge, full-length herringbone woolen coat, which he left Germany in 1937. He was a young man working in his father's business, going to the market in Cologne, and also taking out Christian girls, and that was verboten. Then he had Christian friends. Berta maybe will show a photo later of my father with his friends whom he kept throughout his life, and we're friends with their children. So on the market, Jews were expelled. And my father had done boxing. You know, he was a lad, and he got into a bit of trouble answering back, or I think even punching an SI guard who was throwing him and his friends off the market. So cut a long story short, the young men decided to go off to South Africa together, seek adventure and a better life. And they couldn't take money, but they could take possessions. So presumably he had a trunk and took some things. Yeah, there are the Bonson. The chap on the left is my dad. And these were the Bonson boys. They stayed in touch till they all passed away. So my father was obviously sent off by his parents with some possessions. Why he needed a heavy winter coat to go to Africa, I don't know. But he kept it throughout his life. And when we came to England, I think it was even shortened because it had been full length. He died in 1998. And we didn't know what to do with this coat. It was so important. He also had his patent leather dancing shoes that he got when he was 18. Thank you, Berta. I might show some more things by hand if that's okay. So he had a few items, and when he died, we didn't know what to do with this coat. It was too big and heavy for anybody to wear. We couldn't give it to a charity shop. And I actually had a bit of therapy, and the therapist told me, you know, you are still wearing that coat. It is a huge burden to you. And this young man who wrote this book, he got fascinated by my family, and he's written this amazing book about everybody in this picture and what happened to them. And he said to me, he suggested that he took this coat to Cologne, that it went back to where it came from. And to me, that is huge. That is so significant because the possessions were so important. It was important for us to know that we came from good stock. And I think this kind of tells the story. Berta just told me the coat came from a well-known manufacturer, and I know Michael Veton would say, you know, this is good stuff. So here I have a picture showing Berta as well. My son Tony, we went to Cologne to the museum, and you know, there is the coat for children to try on, and apparently it is also in another exhibition. It's not just a piece of clothing; it tells the story of a family. You know, they were a good, well-established family. We also have a few other possessions. My grandmother had a trousseau, this beautiful geschirr. I've got pieces of it here, just one. It was, you know, plenty of this, plenty of the other. When she was being deported, I think she gave it to her sister, who was married to a Christian, for safekeeping when my grandmother was sent to Riga. And years later, my father's cousin said, you know what, in our garage, we've got your mother's trousseau. And that, you know, what do we do with it? But I think one day it also needs to be somewhere where people will know these things are important. Here is a gorgeous crystal dish, you know, for some reason, a young man, 24 years old, going to Africa, these things were packed in his trunk to go by boat. Behind me also is a menorah that we also have given to my son. And up above, I don't know if you can see, there are the pictures of the grandparents, die Großeltern. And here, in this picture, is the grandfather, who's a father, and the grandmother. So they are with us. We know who we are. We know from whence we've come. And to me, it's so important that through these these objects, these things that were so precious to our family, are kept, and the story is still told. We need to tell the story. My sister's telling the story with the organisation generation to generation, second generation, telling the story of my family. And I've just realised today, you know, what did I put on? I put on my Nova scarf that my mum gave me, because it isn't just the object, it's kind of saying, you know, these were people and never again. Their stories need to be remembered, their importance needs to be remembered. And I really appreciate that the LDARE Centre does tell the stories and does value the people, because that we're not just a number. I think we are preaching to the converted. Yeah, also I just printed off a picture from the LDARE room. This is fun, standing in front of some pictures that either my dad or some other relatives contributed. Of other members of his family who were being marched through the streets and persecuted. And yeah, I think it's very important. For me, it's very emotional, and it is a burden we all carry to tell the story. We've all got stories to tell, but I think these objects can bring it to people to realise these were people with a history, with a story, and it does go on. They are valued. What the hell's going to happen to all this stuff when we go, I don't know. And that's why I think it's good. The objects are valued, the possessions are valued, because they certainly were. They were kept, as Berta said, they were kept for a lifetime. And it is to remember a life that is no more, and people who are no more. I don't know why I'm sort of blithering on. I think I'll maybe stop. As I said, there was a very large family on both sides, on all sides, and they have left something behind for us to treasure. So I don't know how long I've spoken for, but I hand over for questions.
Lovely, thank you. Very impressive indeed. And well, I think you answered most of the questions I wanted to discuss with you as a follow-up. I think it was, well, mostly almost very good concluding remarks you made. Just as an information, because you did briefly mention that the code is currently on display, in an exhibition. So if there's any one of you, I don't think most of you in the audience live locally, but if you ever happen to be in or near Cologne and you're interested to see it, you can actually, it's on display at the City Archives Museum at the moment. And so there's, to give you an impression on how it's presented currently. Well, the City Museum, they opened a new exhibition in spring this year. And a couple of years ago, they approached us and asked if we had any significant objects telling the story of Cologne during the Nazi era, and specifically the story of people being persecuted and being persecuted, made to leave under the Nazi regime. And we thought of this code because we knew that, I think, when Marion and Tony have been in Cologne, when the photos were taken, you just seen, we'd also discussed on what to do with it. And I think you had expressed the wish that it should be presented somehow and tell a story and remind of the people and their stories. So we thought it would be quite a good contribution to give on long-term loan to the museum, and that is now to telling the story. Helmut Katz's story as an example of someone living in Cologne and being driven out of the city being driven out of Germany by the Nazi regime, by the persecution under the regime. It's now on display and will be for the next years at least. They're in a temporary location at the moment, so we don't know how long this exhibition will be on display, but at least for the next couple of years. So yeah, it does tell the story as Marion said. She wished.
Yeah, because it's a burden to all of us, I think, to carry the history of the family. And the reason to tell the story is so that it doesn't happen again. And even more so now, it's more significant than ever. As I said, my sister's going around schools telling, with my mother's diary, that was translated for us into English and also enabled us to understand. You know, she was 16 in 1933, and while she was growing up worrying about the weather and her skating, Hitler came into power, anti-Semitism was rising. She wrote in her diary, you know, perhaps now things will be better now Hitler is Chancellor. You know, it's amazing to hear how she experienced that. She also then landed up going to Palestine, to Tel Aviv, so very similar to Ruth's family story. And it's so important that the stories are told.
Definitely. So as I understood from both your presentation, these objects they've always been around in your family in a way, so you have been aware of them from quite an early age on. Is that correct? Or was it only later that you discovered the stories behind them, that you grasped the full context of what they meant and why they were in your family and what story they had?
Yeah, the dinner service, this Geschirr, this wonderful dinner service. If you take off the screen sharing, then this will be.
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah. We didn't know about it. Literally, my father's cousin survived. Their mother was married to a Christian, and my grandmother gave it to her sister to say, look after this till I got back. And she never got back from Riga. And my father didn't even really know about this until his cousin said, you know what, we've got this in your garage, and it's a massive dinner service, 20 of this plate, 20 of that plate. It's beautiful. I've just brought up a couple of objects to show you. You know, it's absolutely stunning. And yes, they in our family, when my father died, my stepmother gave them to me, and some of my cousins got some. You know, we don't know what we'll do with it because it's too good to use. It doesn't go in the dishwasher, but these are new. The other things were part of everything that came from Zuhause was special, was valuable. You know, it was all the good stuff. But as I said, it's a burden, and if you keep it to yourself, what else can I say? Yes, there was always a consciousness that anything from Zuhause was important. It was precious because there had very little was left. And if I don't tell my children, you know, this is Papa's crystal dish from Papa's home. It's beautiful. It's so modern. You know, what a young man was doing, taking that off to Africa, and this heavy coat. He couldn't wear that coat in Africa. He used to, when he came back to Europe, he bought it, and when we came to England. But when he died, we couldn't get rid of it, and it was so, you know, Berta, it is so heavy. You know, we took those photos with my son. I've got a photo of my daughter in it as well. I don't know when this was. Yeah, and my father was very anxious that we knew about the family. And this book is something else, because this book knows more than I did about my family. And it's just because my father talked to an archive about this family and there's other families.
I just found an article in the internet, a German newspaper, about this book.
Thank you.
Yeah, there were some articles being published when it was book was published.
Yeah, and this Michael Beaton lives in Cologne. In fact, recently I was just been on holiday and met some Germans, and they came from Cologne, and I talked about it, and we found it. And he said, because the stories need to be told. These were just people.
So how about you, Ruth? I think you were aware of your mother's story, and you knew about what she had brought from her old home. But is there anything, when you got that translation of the diary, when you dug into it, was there anything new you learned from it? Was there anything your mother wouldn't talk about? Things.
By the way, I will tell you something very interesting. Some years ago, I went with a friend of mine. We went to the National Library in Jerusalem because she wanted to write a play about all the Kafka affair. And there is a guy, a very nice German doctor, Stefan Litt, his name is. He's very knowledgeable and is a wonderful person, very outstanding among us. You know, he's a big German with an accent. He's a very big, and he's a specialist for this Kafka affair. And we sat with him for I don't know many hours, and I wrote everything he told us about all this Kafka affair, which was an amazing story, amazing, außergewöhnlich story. Never mind the Kafka affair now. And now, by the way, there is a Kafka exhibition in the National Library, and from all these materials that they got from Kafka and all what they got from Switzerland, that she hid it there in the safe and everything. And then one day I came to him, since I felt that I know him, I went to him with a diary. And I asked him to, I don't know, it was before I translated it. And all of a sudden, he translated to me a scene that my mother, she was very young. She was, when she came, she was 14, I think, 14, yeah, 14. And I think a sailor on the ship which went to Alexandria, because they had a stop in Alexandria, tried something with her, something, I don't know, what do you call it, harassed her a little bit or something. And then when they got to the shore in Alexandria, they went to a judge or something, and he was punished, this sailor. I never found it completely. There is perhaps one sentence, something, but I never found it. And this is the editing that she did, I think. And if I wouldn't be more diligent in this subject before I also go to another world, I will never know what is completely written in this diary. But as I said, my knowledge of the diary before I translated it, I had a knowledge because she told me about, she spoke about, from time to time she spoke about it, and I remember that I used to look at it because it was so beautiful. And she said, and what I did is that I have 3 albums of her, and I took a white pencil because the albums were black, if you remember, with this little thing in the corner. So I have like 3 albums like that. And I wrote in this white pencil everything she told me. This is Tante this, and this is Tante that. So until today, when I open this, I know what's going on. Otherwise, I wouldn't know who is these people altogether. All of them are in another world, and I don't know anything of my life. So and as I say, the main feeling that I had is that I knew and I realized that they had some good years here in this Palestina. I don't know, who was quite, I don't know. It was a very poor place, and I don't know how they had money. I don't understand. I know that they bought certificates from the collections that he sold. They brought the certificate to enter Palestine, but I don't know how they lived, from where they lived. Perhaps in that time, the Nazis allowed them to take money. So I don't know, perhaps because he was a rich person. So I don't know, but the collection was already, it was a public sale, and under an anonymous name, not under his name, because it was already too risky. But, so I don't know how they had money to live here. They had to rent a flat. They had to live, but they had good life. They loved what they do. She went to Betzalel and she learned art, and he went almost every day to the old Jerusalem, and he was doing a lot. I still have the ceramics. ניטה, תביא לי רגע את הדלסון, תביא לי את הכד הזה, שנייה, אני אראה להם, את הכד השחור. And he was a real artist. He did beautiful stuff, and I keep everything that I inherited from her. I keep until this will part us or whatever. Can you see it? Can you see?
He did?
That he did, yeah. He painted it and he did everything.
Wow, cool.
Yeah, and he did beautiful things and he painted beautifully. And he was an artist. Perhaps he was also a good lawyer and a tar, but he was a very, very good artist, wonderful hands. And he opened this gallery in Jerusalem in the Generali building. And he had paintings by the best painters then. And my mother used to say that if after he died, he would have left one painting of this artist, she would have been a millionaire, because this painting that he sold then for God knows what, later on cost fortunes, millions of dollars. The most, because this is the beginning of the Israeli art. And he had good eye, and he chose them to present them in his gallery. And I never met somebody who knew this gallery, because I didn't start my research. I started, first of all, due to Beate, that I know a lot because of Beate. Thank God that I met her. And I was busy, the young people are busy with their life, with their friends, don't know what, and they're not interested in the far history of their parents. And only later on, they start to get interest, and sometimes it's too late.
Maybe it's allowed to mention two things.
Yes, sure.
First of all, when Eugen Rosenberg was taken to the Schutzhaft, it was maybe the 30 or 31 March 1933. It was the Tag of the Wiederherstellung des deutschen Beamtentums. I cannot translate in English. He was in the court, the Reichsspielstraße, and the Nazis came and took out every Jew out of the court. It was a lawyer, notary, a visitor, everyone out, put them on a Müllwagen, on a garbage car that drove to the Hohe Straße and zum Klotwigplatz runter. Again, the street name is not important. Maybe 2 kilometers on this garbage car, all the Jewish lawyers, notaries were sitting. The concitizens gave the applause to the Nazis. Eugen Rosenberg, he had a car. The Nazis took the car from the court, and here at the Klotwigplatz, everyone was throwing out of this car and couldn't go back to the offices or anything. They had to leave Cologne immediately. He came home. The Nazis were in his house. He came 2 weeks to the Schutzhaft, and then he had to leave Cologne. This is the one thing.
They were not dismissed at that point. I mean, they were not forced to leave Cologne. Many did because they saw they couldn't make a living here anymore. But there was no formal.
No, but she in the scene I read, he
must leave Cologne. He must leave Cologne.
That he couldn't. That they released him, but he had to leave Köln. She's speaking about it. My mother, she's writing it, and then he fled. And that's actually, they were 1 year in Berlin, and then that's how he played, because it was already 33. It's very early, and then he started to plan and his voyage to Palestine with his daughter and his mistress, because the mother stayed here. in Germany.
And the second thing, what I like to mention very shortly, her mother, Eva, she explained in her diary the house, inside the house, how it looks like, which pictures, which carpenter, everything, very like she's a journalist. I had the luck 6 or 7 years ago to enter the house. Someone from the family still lived there. And I can tell you the house looks like exactly 100% like she said. Nothing was changed. I was sitting in the saloon, I couldn't imagine, 70 years ago. So it was the same. Now they renovate, now they change.
Yes, I think it's quite amazing if you can still see what remained of their former lives.
At least the house remained, and the house is like, like, איך אומרים, כמו מזכרת כזאת.
Monument.
Monument.
It's a listed building, yeah.
Yeah.
It's listed.
Because you are not allowed to change. I don't think he can change it in the inside. Perhaps he did a renovation, but I'm not sure he can change even the inside, even the staircase. He's not allowed. I know
it depends on the grade. It is listed. There are different grades, and there are stricter regulations.
This is a very strict.
Yes, he cannot change the walls, but he can change the colors, the carpet, all these things. Yes. But when I enter, there was a Ekorim Mitragot.
Stairs.
The stairs. And in the stairs on the side, she described in her diary classes, and inside these classes, art from China or Japanese, and it was like that still.
Ah, yes?
Yes, it was like that still. It was, by the way, it is a wonderful house. If the sun is coming back, go to Rodenkirchen, make a sidewalk at the Rhine and look at this house.
Yeah, it's very
wonderful house.
Okay, so I would now like to open the panel to questions from the audience. So if there is anything you'd like to ask or contribute to the discussion, please feel free to either write in the chat or unmute yourself and contribute.
Maybe I have a question to Marion. Marion, how many pages this book has?
Quite a lot. I've just put the book title in because I saw you looking for it. I put it in the chat. It's in English and German.
Yeah.
In German called Michael Wheaton. I've got to 267.
Oh, okay. Wonderful.
Very detailed, comprehensive study of family history.
Building in Cologne.
And the story behind it, that how he came across this family and their story, that he moved into the building where the butcher shop had been and where the family had lived upstairs. And he heard rumors that one of the former tenants in the 30s had killed himself and committed suicide. And that kind of intrigued him. And he started doing research. I think he has a background as a historian, so he knew how to do it. That's
Benno Katz, my father's.
Benno Katz, yeah. And that's what got him started. These rumors that something had happened, that there had been someone committing suicide, and people living in the building at that time, they didn't really, they either didn't know about the details or they didn't want to to talk about them. And that started him on the research, and then it all ended in the book. And he's still in touch with you. He's still going back and forth and viewing the documents you still have. So he's still into the story.
He spent over 10 years.
The connection. How sometimes people come across these stories that they live somewhere and want to know about the place's history, or that they hear stories about people who lived in the same street in the same house before.
He spent over 10 years, and he came and he took all the letters which you have now, and he has worked on the letters my father had from his parents, which we can't read because that was in the old German. and everybody wrote tiny, tiny, tiny. So they are in your museum. My sister's on this. She could talk if she wanted to. But Michael started by going to this archive that my father had contributed a tape to, talking about this is Uncle so-and-so and Auntie so-and-so and Cousin so-and-so. And my father left this tape, which I think you have too, or we'll get it to you. And that's what started Michael. Then he traveled the world. He's been here. He's been to America. He met my uncle. He met my father's brother and other aunties, you know, and he has he'll never finish this work. Who can translate? Ich halte euch fest und lasst mir nicht los. Nicht los.
Yeah, nicht mehr los.
Yeah.
Nice title.
Yeah.
So, well, are there any other questions?
Can I ask?
Yeah, sure.
Can you translate the title to English of the book?
I hold you tight and I won't let you go.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And that's also what I did with the coat. And he persuaded me, and it was a relief because I couldn't carry. The psychiatrist said to me, not a psychiatrist, a therapist said, "You are carrying this heavy coat on your shoulders. You're carrying the burden of your whole family history." And it was such a relief to give it to Cologne, where it came from. My father would be delighted, I think. You know, we couldn't throw it away. We couldn't give it to a tramp. I couldn't wear it. And so we have let it go to a good place, and that's very, very important. You know, that's why it's so significant, because it was so important to my dad, but it's important to the world.
Can I compliment Berta on the display that you just showed of the coat? It looks very, very professional. And also to Beata and yourself, and to people like this Michael, who have taken the story for me and also for my sister and Ruth, who's on, to keep these family links alive. And we do value very much the input of historians and archivists like yourself, who are making sure that this history is out there for the next generations. So thank you for all your input. Makes it
Important.
accessible for people.
Thanks, that's very moving. Well, the honor for the display goes to the colleagues from the City Museum. So all we did was pointing them to the coat and its story, but they're responsible for the display and for the So honor where honor's due. I was not the one being involved in that, but. Yes, so well, I would like to, because you mentioned the next generation, I would probably like to conclude with the last question, how you would like to keep that story alive, what you would wish for, how these objects will be presented in the future, how future generations in your family, as well as people here in Germany who learn about the city's history and the history of its former citizens. What would you like to convey to them? How would you like to keep that memory alive?
Something I feel, we on this presentation and on others, we're often talking to the converted. We're talking to people who are interested, people who know, people who've got their own family history, people who want to know, what can we do I'm going to be quite blunt, what can we do about people who are racist, who don't get the significance of this? How can we get the message to them? As I said, my sister's doing this, going to talk to schools about my mother's diary. But most of the time, the Zooms are people who know and care. How do we get this message to people who don't? And yeah, one thing I want to do is get my mother's diary published, because it's also hugely significant. And I don't know how to do that.
I also would have liked to publish this diary, and I play with this idea for many years. But it's if your diary is not like so you know, with all these drawings that are interwoven in the diary, then it's very, very simple. You just need some money, and somebody will do the job. If I don't know in which language, if it's in German, you translate it, you pay to someone, you go over it with somebody who understand, you know, how to do this stuff. It's a matter of money. In my case, it's more complicated because of this drawing, because the whole thing with this diary is a drawing. And the second thing is that I did a translation in order to, but I'm not satisfied with this translation. I think things are missing, not because of the translation, because of my mother, and that she edited the thing, so it's not complete. And I also need a bunch of you know, some money. And if I have the money, I can go and make it. I can go to some publisher, but if I pay the publishers, sometimes it takes these jobs and they do it.
Ruti, the first question, the most important question is, who should be the audience?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it interests people in Germany. I don't know, and I don't know how to address to it.
Do you think people in Israel will be interested about the diary?
I don't know. I tried to get in contact with the Bezalel school. I never succeeded. I have to be more consistent about it and go there and show it to them, and perhaps they will not pay, of course, for it. I know that I will have to invest the money. Nobody will invest in this diary. And I need to know if it has some literature importance, and not only something that, because the way it is cut, there are some places where there is one line written and it's not. I don't know. I don't know if it has it's interesting for the public at all. For me, it's very interesting. For my children, I'm not sure. I don't know. I was playing with the idea to contribute it to the national library or to Yad Vashem, but again, I'm very attached to this diary.
Couple of years ago, I took the first 10 pages of the diary of your mother. In the first 5-6 pages, she explained a lot of things of the house. She took names, she explained which furniture it's in. We don't know this furniture anymore, so I put a star on the words, and down I wrote down what is this sofa, what is this, she was writing about the pencil, etc. The same you have to do with the whole diary, also to mention what happened in Germany and what happened when she was in Palestine. And then maybe to make it in a book out of German Hebrew. Very good in Germany for people who learn Hebrew. To have it in German and in Hebrew. Very good for schools when they learn the history. I'm not sure if people in Israel are so interested about.
I'm not sure so.
And I think because she also covers her time in Israel, or the first years in Palestine. So I think it might be interesting for that, for the Israeli history as well.
I want to comment that I think Israelis will be extremely interested in it. There is a huge interest in Holocaust survivors and how they escaped, and the situation in Israel, Palestine. And I think the idea of putting history on one side and the diary on another side is beautiful. Whether it's practical or not, I don't know, but the idea is beautiful.
Yeah.
I think it becomes quite clear that you should, one should do things with the objects, and they shouldn't just be left in some archival collections, and they're so valuable, and there's so much you can tell through them that we all should definitely make use of it and publish it in some way, or present them in some way or another. And I think it's very, because they have these personal links and these connections to individuals and to their experiences. They're very good to tell about the history and have this biographical approach. So it's definitely something we should keep in mind, that to make as good use of these artifacts to present this history and to commemorate the people.
I'm thinking about, I know one publisher of Magnus publisher house, and I'll talk to him, I'll ask him. I'm not sure they will, even if I will have to pay for everything, they will not put 1 shekel in them, but I'm not sure they'll be interested. I'll make a meeting with him. He will give me an idea if it's worthwhile dealing with it or publishing it. I'm not completely sure. But
Ruti, otherwise we make a book on demand here in Frankfurt. You pay maybe 100 euro for the grammar, and then you make a carrier. You read from the book. You are sitting in a synagogue in Germany. Maybe you make a little tour. Lamano.
I think the details must be discussed in some other.
I think in this case it's very important. Don't talk, just start to do.
Yes,
because time is running, and it's a very important time in Israel, of course, also in Europe. The fascists are coming back. We have to do every little step.
I just wondered, Ruth, if really the story also is the success of your family when they did emigrate to Israel, and what they made of their lives. I think building on that is also very relevant to what happens when people have been displaced and have to start a new life. And I think that's very much the continuity of your diary.
Yes. Yeah.
So, well, I think that's quite a good concluding remark of tonight's discussion. Unless there are any other questions.
I want to say thank you to you, Berta, really. I do want to say thank you to you for your interest and your promotion of this.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Berta, for inviting us.
Thanks, it was very moving.
Well, thank you. Thank you all for joining, and a very special thanks to you, Ruth and Marion, for sharing the stories and contributing your presentation.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think we'll end it here, and well, we'll be in touch anyway. So and see what we can do.
Okay,
with future projects.
Bye bye.
Thank you.